Welcome back to American Hustle. Today's guest is a dear friend of mine, Jeff King. He came out of East Tennessee with a guitar, a backbone, and a work ethic that never missed a day. He's played with the biggest names in music, but what I respect most is how he built a life outside of the spotlight. Real estate, discipline, long-term thinking. That's the real hustle. Today we're talking mastery, money, and the future of music in an AI world. I'm Austin Moody, and this is American Hustle.
So Jeff's played on hundreds of my hits.
Well, you never know they're hits until they get out there. They're all hits.
Yeah. So I want to, how I like to start this show is I want to take people back. So we're both East Tennessee boys.
Yeah.
I'm a little farther east, Kingsport, but you were born in Townsend. Is that
I was
right?
born in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah. And then at the age of 1, we moved to Maryville, Tennessee. My dad is from the town of Townsend.
Okay.
And I think he was born at the hospital in Maryville. And anyway, so we lived in Maryville for maybe 6 years. Then we moved to Townsend and lived beside my grandmother while my folks were building their house out in the valley. So then we moved out in the valley when I was about 9, maybe.
Okay.
So been up there a long time.
Yeah.
It's home.
So what was it like growing up there? Because at that time, I mean, I'm sure it was super small.
Super rural, really. There was a caution light and a few little gas station grocery stores and a school. If you want to go to the doctor or the hospital, you had to go to Maryville, which was maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes away. But Townsend's kind of back in the mountains right before you go into the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So in the summertime, Townsend would be swimming with tourists. And in the wintertime, there would be, I think at that time, probably 400 people maybe. My friend and I used to leave basketball practice in, whenever, like November or whatever, and we'd come down the middle. We'd walk down the middle of the highway on the center line all the way to his house was, half a mile away, and never see a car. So a small town.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I grew up, as you know, in Kingsport, but spent a lot of time. Kingsport was, it was a decent little small town. But I part of my childhood, I grew up in Yuma, Virginia, down across the line, Nicholsville. My stepdad had a place in Nicholsville, and Nicholsville sounds a lot like Townsend for you. I mean, that was like, some parts of my life I sound like the 1960s, because you still had barbershops with picking parlors, and you could hitch a ride on a 2-lane road and get a ride into town and try to go in and buy, get away with buying some cigars or, so there was 2 competing gas stations and 1 restaurant called Teddy's. So, what would, guys and gals listening to this, a lot of them are, hustlers, blue collar entrepreneurs, dreamers, fathers, and you've done every bit of it. Was there a moment when you were a kid back in East Tennessee to where you knew you wanted to do music? Back before Logic kicked in, and you were a kid.
well, yes, I think so. I got my first guitar when I was about 10. Found it at my grandmother's house in the back of a closet. And it was not a great playing guitar, but it was my uncle's guitar, and he had one, but I don't think he ever played it. And so I remember sitting there listening to the strings going, man, that's cool the way those ring. I didn't know how to tune it or anything, just listening to wow, it's just the sound. And for me, my aunt I just bought a 45. Dobie Gray had put out Drift Away. And I remember sitting there at her, it was probably a mono, little record player. And I just remember going, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. How do you do this? Where does this come from? I had no idea how you go in a studio and record and do multiple passes of stuff to make the guitars cool like they were on that record. And I just remember thinking it was overwhelming how cool it was. And then I started getting, I had a tape recorder. Somebody else had a tape recorder. So I used both tape recorders, and I started playing things on the guitar, which I still had no idea what a chord was or what a tuning. So I just play little notes on one, and I'd play it back, and I'd add another one. And so I was doing my West Virginia. This was in West Virginia, where my mom's from. I was doing my own West Virginia, multi-tracking from cassette to cassette. And it was fun. I was just thinking, man, this is so awesome. The world is your oyster. You can do anything.
So was there somebody that in your family played?
My grandmother played piano in church, and my mom played some piano in church. My dad had a juice harp, that's the sound of country. And I just wanted to play guitar. I don't know. And I took lessons from a local guy. His name was Ronnie Sullivan. He was in the Sullivan family had a band. There was a bunch of them. So there were drummer, bass player, electric player, and my friend Ronnie played acoustic and sang great. And I think there was a sister that sang, and started hanging out with them just a little bit as a teenager. But in my town, there were no bars or anything. So I think on Sunday evenings, they used to get together at somebody's house under a tree and play bluegrass. And I thought that was cool, but it still wasn't what I wanted to. Was focused on hearing other things. And then I got, started getting interested in the Marshall Tucker Band and some of the Southern rock stuff. And then the Eagles came out with Hotel California. And I guess that was maybe late 70s. But I'm not sure what record. I'm confused about the records. But there was a song, I Can't Tell You Why. You remember that? You'd know it if you heard it. But anyway, it's very soulful. And by this point, I had a really bad guitar. And my parents had bought me a Fender Pro Reverb. And some kind of electric guitar. So I remember figuring out the solos on some of that stuff, going, wow, this is so cool. Playing along with it. So I was sort of in the Eagles for a while. And then in my mind, but that just made everything a little more intense. And my want to learn how to do this got stronger. But at the time, there was no YouTube. There was no way to slow things down other than slow it down on your record player and change the key and try to figure out what you're doing. And then I realized there's really nowhere to learn this other than exactly where I was learning it from or taking lessons from somebody. And there was no else. My friend Ronnie knew how to play chords and maybe a little bit of picking, but not the kind of stuff that I had heard that I wanted to be involved in. So I just sort of learned, you got to sit down and do this yourself. No way, I know it's not coming from anywhere. Yeah. So I just think how much better I would be now if I had all this stuff that we have now, all the YouTube, and you can slow things down on YouTube. Yeah. Well, I don't know. And
That's interesting. I never thought of that because in East Tennessee, there's a lot of guys that teach bluegrass.
Yeah.
You can find a banjo instructor.
Oh yeah.
And find somebody to teach you how to flat pit.
Yeah. The doghouse.
Yeah.
Bass.
I've never thought about that before because I always wanted to play bluegrass. Mm-hmm. Once my mind wasn't opened up to everything when I was younger, it was bluegrass, gospel, and country. That's all that was on the radio in my house, you know.
I didn't know about bluegrass, really. And I didn't know much about gospel other than what happened at church. You know, there were a few quartets that used to come in, and my first band gig was in a quartet that my mom sang in at church, and I was using this little bitty tiny Fender down here, this little Vibro Champ. It's got an 8-inch speaker, and somehow it was always too loud. And I think it was always too loud because I was really bad. And they just turn down this little bit. It's really loud out front. Just turn down a little bit. Yeah. So
Hey,
you learn all this stuff
Yeah.
in a way, you know. It's like bumper cars.
so, you know, being a kid, playing church and all that stuff, were you dreaming about, you know, going, how can I figure out how to do this for a living and transitioning? When did logic or whatever kick in to where it's like, well, you know, I need to go, because I know you went to ETSU
Mm-hmm.
to become an architect, right?
I was on my way.
And so, was there a moment you're like, I want to do this? Because for me, I played in bands, you know, love music, was dedicated to it, but I never thought about people making a living doing it when I was a kid, you know. And I mean, I had no intention of moving to Nashville to do that. That was not my intent. I had other plans too. Until an opportunity came across my door to be able to come down here. I had never thought of it before. So was there that moment for you that you were like, you wanted to do it, but then you thought, that's not practical?
Well, so if I back up a little bit, Mom used to take me to some of the shows at the Knoxville Coliseum. You probably remember that over there, really old now. And I remember seeing Freddie Hart. Remember Easy Loving? Remember that song? And I went to see Jerry Lee Lewis there. And there might have been a couple other really country, you know, artists that she took me to. So that kind of started my seeing those guys on stage going, how do you even get to, I mean, what do you do to get there? I mean, how does that work? You know, so I had no idea. I was still too young to know. You move to Nashville and you work your tail off. But so fast forward in college, I had a job at a print shop that was a part-time job. And one of the guys that worked there was this guy named Steve. And he said, hey, I'm putting together a band, you know you're a guitar player. You want to come play? I was like, sure. So my other buddy, Jeff, was a guitar player. He worked at the same shop. And we went and sort of played in this band, and Steve played bass and sang, and then we got a drummer, and Steve was a really good singer. So our first gig was at the Elks Club in Elizabeth in Tennessee, which you know that area because it's close up there. But I remember thinking at the end of the day, we made $30. Wow. That's $60 for the weekend. That's more than I was making at the print shop gig. I'm going, whoa, this is cool. But not only is it the money cool, it's fun.
Yeah.
And challenging. And, you know, and you definitely, for me at that time, I was in a contest with myself. Like, how do I get through the 4 sets and at the end of it go, I felt like I did a good job tonight. I never, ever got to that spot. It was just always fun and we had a good time, and, you know, a certain amount of chaos was going on all around us, but it was fun. I kept thinking, boy, something's really got into me and I just really love doing this. And so I finished school and got my degree, and then I thought, well, I guess I'm going to move to Nashville and see if I can get a job. And I had come down between my junior and senior year to try to get a job at Opryland. So I went into the audition, you know, you'd say, and stand outside at Opryland, and there's 6 or 8 guitar players, and they're all playing jazz, and I'm going, man, I don't know how to play any of this stuff. And it's like, what are you going to play? And I went, I don't know, maybe I'll play the melody to Last Date. And now looking back, I'm going, surely there was a Dwayne Eddy song or something that would have been cool, but, and this guy in front of me was really nice. He said, I think you might want to play something with some chords in it to show them that you know some chords, because to get this job, you're going to need to be able to memorize stuff, and you're going to have to know how to play things, because they're going to say, here's a song, we're going to do this, whatever, tomorrow, next week, whatever. You're going to have to learn it. You need to focus on this. Of course, I didn't get the job, but I did remember him saying that, and then I started thinking about that. And I think I went back another time and auditioned and didn't get the job. And I'm so thankful for everyone that turned me down there, because things might not have been the same. Because of then, I had to hustle. I had to go get better. And I'd go around town and I'd see these guys and go, man, these guys are so good. And I'd had this little mini cassette recorder, and I'd take it with me. And if I saw somebody really good, I'd record 30 minutes of them. All the clubs had there were a lot of clubs. There was a lot of music in the, 83, 84 when I moved to Nashville. So there was a lot of opportunities to hear great stuff. And a lot of those guys became big time session players, and they were younger then, and they were light years ahead of me. And I was going, how do you do this?
Yeah.
So I became friends with all of those guys, which I still am today. But I'd get that micro cassette and I'd go home and I'd just listen. Most of the time it would baffle me, because they would play country and jazz at the same time. And so I just go, boy, some of these notes I just can't hear. I don't hear that note. I know there's a note there, but I don't know what it is. So it forced me to continue to play and find my own version of whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so you finished ETSU, got your degree,
yeah,
architecture,
in engineering technology.
Okay, and then you moved to that year.
Mm-hmm.
So what'd you do when you got here? What were your
Went out to a club, and that's when I started all this stuff.
You started playing right when you...
No, I started listening.
Okay.
And I was trying to get
a
job.
Do for a living?
Well, first I worked at service merchandise at the warehouse. That was rough. But, hey, if that's what I had to do, I was, but anyway, I was there for about 3 months, and then I answered an ad in the paper looking for a guitar player, just blindly looked. And, so it ended up, I called him, and I think it was the kind of thing where if you just called, you got the job. So I got the job, and the rest of the guys, there was a piano player, a girl singer, and a sax player. And they had just moved here from Texas. So we all got the job and got a bass player, a drummer. And the singer was an architect that I knew. I had no idea who this was. So it all just kind of was like, what? How's this all coming together? So we played, once a month for him, random places around, little shows here and there. And then the guys in the band, when they came from Texas, they were a band. They said, hey, you want to go, if we don't do this anymore, we can go on the road and make better money, and we can just go on the road. It'll be fun. And you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah. So I didn't get a job. I couldn't get a job anyway in my degree, because everybody wanted somebody with experience, and,
right.
I didn't have any. So,
was up there also, like, so at this time you've got sort of your foot in the door. Was there a fear of going, if I go down the path of my degree, will I ever come back to trying to make this work? Had to be a little bit of question in there, whether do I play the safe route?
Right. Well,
do I do this?
I did try to get a job.
You did?
Yeah. After a couple times of interviews and people saying no because I had no experience with it, then I called and got this thing, and we did these gigs. And then the next thing I know, I'm out on the road with these guys, and we're doing clubs where a band comes in from out of town. We'd be there 6 nights a week, 4 sets a night. I'm thinking, Nothing else is going to make you play better than that. And which was great because I had a briefcase full of mini cassettes. And I get up in the day and I'd learn these things and I'd go try them at night, and sometimes it'd be a terrible disaster, but sometimes I'd go, oh, here's how this connects together. So I did that for about 3 years. And then, remember my friend in the band back at college? So he had gone to MTSU in their recording degree, and he was working for one of the big-time engineers up here as a second engineer, which is the guy that does all the, like, rolls all the mic cables, puts all the mics out there, he's basically the assistant to the engineer. So he was working for one of the big-time engineers, and they were recording Patty Loveless was a new artist, so they were recording her record. And she was very new, and her manager was her brother, and he was new, and they were like, yeah, we got to get a band together. And my friend called me and goes, hey, there's this girl that's doing this really cool stuff. You know, you want me to give him your name and tell him you might be interested? I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. So I get a call, and he goes, his name was Roger. It was Patty's brother. And Roger said, hey, we're going to get together over here at this place, and you want to come and play? And I'm like, okay. No, back up a little bit. In between there, I'd done auditions for artists where you go into a rehearsal studio and you stand in a line of about 12 people, and people are playing in front of you, and you're going, man, this guy's good, or this guy's, you're thinking all this stuff. And I'm going, I don't know how this is going to work, but they give you 1 or 2 songs to learn, and you learn them. And, so anyway, I sort of knew how that went. I hope this is not one of those auditions because I don't do well in this. Too nervous. And so I go in, and we're at the old Acuff Rose building, which used to be on 8th Avenue across from the Sonic. You might know that building. But went in. It was really hot up there in the attic where we were rehearsing. So bass player, drummer, acoustic player, steel player, and myself, we all show up, and we don't know each other. Hey, how you doing? So we start playing a couple Patty songs that they sent to us, and okay, well, we're going to rehearse these next 4 days. And it's like, well, are we in the band? I mean, how does this work? Yeah. I'm like, wow, okay. We like everything we're hearing, so it sounds good. So,
was this her first record and just kind of first base level?
Yeah. Okay. First record. And, she had done the same things that I had done, toured out and clubs, lots of clubs. And so she was at all the rehearsals like we were normally, and then we started playing dates. So I was with Patty's band for about 5 years, or maybe 5.5. And then by that point, I was starting to get called for a few sessions here in Nashville, and I thought, man, this is great. Patty's awesome, wonderful person, still in contact with her after all these years. And I thought, I was starting to feel this thing inside me that goes, okay, it's time. I'm like, it's time to what? It's time to get off the road and try to chase this session dream, which I'd learned more and more about as I go along. And so I remember the day, it was December, and probably, I think it was 91, that I called Patty and I said, I think it's time for me to move on. And she said, well, I'm making some changes in the band, but you weren't going to be one of them. So, if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay. And I went, I think it's time that I've been doing this, 5.5 years. We're going back to a lot of these same arenas that we'd done before we were open for all these people.
And had she had her like big old hits?
She'd had a few big hits, yeah. And I was so fortunate to be there and so thankful. And, it hurt my heart a little bit to leave, but I kept thinking, I got a feeling that for me, there's probably going to be more, something that I need to move on to. And so then I started really trying to focus on the session thing. And at that point, I was maybe doing session every 2 weeks, and I'd go home and practice, and boy, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have done this. And practice, and get sounds and work on your amps and stuff like that. And then I started getting a little more and a little more. And I don't know if you know my friend Spady Brannon, but he's a bass player. He's semi-retired now, but he's also writes novels, which is doing great with that stuff. So he called me one day, and we had met on a session before, and he said, my guy that I call all the time, who he grew up with, was Chris Lusinger, played on all the Garth stuff. He said, Chris is starting to get really busy, played on this Garth stuff. It's moved him up to the next level, so he's not doing as many demos, and, I know you're really trying to hustle, and so why don't you come do a bunch of these with us? So all of a sudden, I went from like one every 2 weeks to, maybe 5 every 2 weeks, maybe 10 sessions a month. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, this is cool. I'm really getting to learn how to craft this stuff. Because you can play all day with the radio or sit and practice by yourself, but when you go into a song and they're doing anywhere between 3 and 5 songs in 3 hours, you have to make decisions fast, and you have to be creative fast, and you have to think about, okay, here's the song, here's this groove, and here's this key. And if they want a guitar hook, I have to be able to come up with a guitar hook that somebody wants to hum when they leave. And you just work on that and work on it and work on it and work on it. And then I had what I like to call option anxiety, because you think, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. Until I learned over time, don't think about all that. Go in, sit down, pick up the guitar. What are you going to do? What do you feel first? And then adapt from there.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
do you have other session guys like that you admired around you that kind of gave these tidbits to you?
oh yeah.
Was there a particular guy who really?
Well,
the session world?
Spady was great to me, and he would say, why don't you try this? Nobody was ever like, that's awful. Nobody's ever real degrading, but I did have, so this was before clicks, when you had to have time, and you worked on your time as well. Come home, sit with a metronome and practice your eighth notes. And one time a keyboard player did turn around, he's playing, and he turned around at the end of a song, and as the notes were ringing out, he looked at me and he said, you need to learn to subdivide. I said, what do you mean? He goes, instead of think it as so that'll help these, instead of going because that'll drift in your mind. He said, your time will get better, and you need to get better. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were lots of guys that would, I was thrown in with the guys that were older than me, that were established somewhat, and, sometimes you walk out and you're thinking, I'm lucky that somebody didn't shoot me right then, because maybe I didn't play something that was cool, or played over top of somebody, or, all these things that you have to learn as you're doing this. And, but a lot of those guys were really, really nice to me and very helpful. Very thankful to them all.
So what I already know about you, but other people don't, I want to talk about from going from live to session. What is the talent discipline ratio for, like, people look at it and go, oh, that guy's just extremely naturally talented. I want to talk about, like, the discipline that goes beyond that, in the sense of, like, what you're saying. You're going, getting better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to just, be a product. You see these young prodigy guys, right? These kids that, wear out a guitar, whatever else. In some scenarios, you throw them into the session world, they're not going to be able to do what they do, just because they got all the talent in the world. So,
mm-hmm.
So what's that ratio when it comes to going into sessions and having that much pressure? What people don't see behind the scenes. You going home and you're going, I got to get better at this.
Mm-hmm.
What's that look like? In those early stages to become,
Well, like they say, one listen is worth 1,000 words, is a studio comment that's used often, meaning that, when you're not cutting demos, if you're cutting a record, it used to be one song every 3 hours. So you run through it a couple times and then we'd take one and we'd go in and one listen is worth 1,000 words. Instead of sitting out here talking about this and talking about this, let's go listen and see how it feels, because that's the ultimate closer of all of it, because you go in there and you listen and go, boy, my part sucks. It's not helping this. And I need to change to something, or I like what my part does, because your job as a studio guitar player is to support the song, not try to be anything other than a support. And if you come up with a cool lick that supports the song, great. If you play a cool solo that supports the song, great. But you're not, I think you get called for being well-rounded, as opposed to, doing like being a shredder or something, because, guys sometimes get called to do a solo on something like that. But, you have to learn, you have to take it from the bottom where the song is. And I guess where I was headed with this is sometimes doing a record or something, you hear it later. Like if it's a demo, somebody'd send you, oh man, hey, these turn out great. And you listen to them, and most of the time I would just be going, oh, it just sounds out of tune. Maybe it's not, maybe it is, maybe something else. I don't know. But boy, I thought my sound was better. I have to remember to make this, and then you go back in to practice and practice. You're kind of doing this all along, working on your tones, because to sit here in a room and play through an amp is one thing, but to put a microphone on it this big and hear it is another thing, because it's a different, a lot of people might disagree on this, but it's a different sound. You have to adjust your amp to make this sound good. This microphone, where if you're in the room, you might sound different,
Yeah.
For instance, I noticed that I did a showcase one time, and they said, you play on this record, just have your Cardi's guys bring all your gear that you used on this record, and that's what we want to use on this showcase. So it sounds the same. I did, and I remember standing in front of my rig going, what is, this sounds so different. It's mid-rangey and, had some low stuff and some top end stuff. And I was going, and the last thing I left was a session, and I'm going, wow, that's interesting, because that's not how I would play it live. I would darken it up or brighten it up or whatever. But, I did that came this way because it was in front of a microphone. And
Yeah.
Most of the time I used, or still do, but use heads and cabinets. So the head's right beside me, and I can reach down and turn something. I don't have to get up and run the room.
Yeah.
So you just learn.
This you learn too, when people tell you to do something, you go somewhere in your brain where you go, well, they don't understand. When you go from the session to live, it's not going to sound the same. So I want to show up, and I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to make it right.
Oh yeah,
to be.
You make it right for the room you're in. And but all that brings you to a spot where, for me, I'd just be devastated. If I heard something that I didn't sound as good as I wanted to sound on, then it's just I'm going to go on and practice, and I'm going to,
Because when was your first session? What year was that roundabout?
Oh, maybe 87.
Okay.
Something like that.
And then how long did it take?
No, maybe 86.
How long did it take when you were kind of like, okay, I'm doing this
Well,
5 days a week?
Yeah, it built up steam, and until I was, during the busiest part of my career, I was probably, a session is 3 hours, starts at 10, and at 1 you stop, and then you have lunch, and then at 2 another one stops at 5, maybe have one bite to eat or whatever, and the next one starts at 6. A lot of times you're in the same place. A lot of times you're moving 3 different places in a day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how many you can have. You can have. They used to do 10 p.m.s. So when there was so much work, you'd work all that. Some of the guys before me were doing like 4 sessions a day and just not sleeping.
Yeah.
But
so you went through the 90s, the 2000s, then those 2010. Now you're here. 4 or 5 different variations of country music. I know you play a lot of other music, but mostly it's been country. Tell us about a little, like, it's interesting to me, like, where you're at now, you've gone, okay, this is the sound going on right now. This is the hot sound. I've got that down. And then, is it a gradual change? So the whole time is just a slow gradual to tones, to what you're playing, to what's working, to how things are moving. What's that transition like? Kind of going, because I mean, if you're gonna be at the top of the session world, you've got to adapt as time goes on, and different variations of music is happening. From the 90s to the early 2000s is completely different.
I think one of the coolest things as a guitar player is for somebody to come up and go, man, whoever played on this record is really cool. I really like what they did. And sometimes that was the pinnacle of what you wanted. You wanted to not be, as a session player, you wanted to be a chameleon and be able to do whatever. So you have to learn about what a clean sound does and what a dirty sound does. And, I mean, I don't know if you can see all these amps, but the Matchless, the Rev, the Bassman, the Marshall, they're all different variations of sound. So, and within a day, I mean, I'll use all these at some point. Styles changing. You just got to kind of listen to stuff. I think it starts happening here in town about a year before things come out, though, or maybe a year and a half. People start, different players that are coming in will bring something new, and they're often paired on the session with another guitar player, and sometimes it's a newer guy and a guy that's been here for a while, and both of them learn from each other. And so that's just pollinating everybody, with different things. So I don't know that there's a real good answer for that, but
it makes sense. I mean, like I said, it's probably a gradual thing, evolving over time.
Yeah.
Day, every week, every month, as things are changing.
It's
all of it happened overnight. Yeah. So what do you think? I know this will be a hard question for you because you're such a humble guy. And you're still probably in your mind going, how can I get better?
Oh yeah, every day.
And so how do you think you got to the point to where you were the first call from massive artists, Tony, producers like Tony Brown and all these guys that go, all right, I'm booking this session and here's my drummer, my bass player, and I'm going to call Jeff King first to see if he can play guitar on this. What do you think made the difference? It can be all the above. Talent, the way you are in the room, the way you communicate.
I think all of those things.
Yeah.
And I mean, first thing is you have to be able to be creative and deliver something. And then along with that, not instead of, but, you need to be a good hang in the room and not be positive and come in and be happy. I mean, man, I'm happy to be there. Whoever it is, I'm happy to be there playing guitar.
Yeah.
And then, lots of times you have to be a good listener because you're listening to what somebody's trying to tell you. Sometimes artists are not, some are great, some are not so great because it's not what they do. And sometimes when they're trying to tell you something, they don't have the same words that you're used to hearing, like from your bass player buddy who'll say, "Hey, play eighth notes here." The artist might go, "I wish you could play something that was more like percussive," and you go, "I'm not sure what that means," and you find out it's just don't. You have to be able to interpret that, but not go, "What an idiot." Why didn't you just say that? Because they don't know the term.
Yeah.
Because they don't live in this world every day. They'll come in and do a record for 2 weeks.
It's always something you heard from me.
Well, you hear it from but the ability to, take that language and translate it into music.
Yeah.
That's an important part, because then you feel comfortable with somebody being there. They're not going to blow up at the artist when he says something like, "Hey," I mean, if I could say how many times some artist or writer or whatever has said, "Hey, try this," and in my mind I go, "This is not going to work. It's the silliest idea." But I go, "Okay, let's try it." For two reasons. It might work, and the second thing is they've heard it, and if it doesn't work, they've heard it, and then we can move on.
Yeah.
So many times I've done something like that and go, "I don't know how in the world this worked. I would have never done this." But note to self, put that back there and be aware that, even if they can't translate what they need to say, they might be telling you something that's really cool.
Yeah.
Because it's their song and they've lived with it. So
It's kind of like, the patient telling the doctor what he needs to do.
yeah.
And I've also seen guys in the room that could shut down a honest idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it gets real awkward.
That's why I'm good with jokes, because then I come up with something like that and we start laughing again. But yes, and I've seen guys not be asked back because done with that kind of a session.
It's like,
Depends.
at the end of the day, that artist is paying for it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And, I remember, I've heard tons of stories like that, and I've had it happen to me. And a lot of those guys, thank God for home studios, because it would be working otherwise.
Yeah.
But so when you're doing, in the late 90s, 2000s, were you doing like 4 sessions a day?
I was doing 3 every day, sometimes.
How do you not burn out?
Well, you do.
Doing that many?
Yeah.
You do. What do you do? Because, you got to go back in the next week, the next day, and do it. Mm-hmm. You can't, if you get a call for a record, you get booked all the time. It's not like you can go, well, I guess you could. But probably an underlying fear of like, well, if I don't, somebody else is going to come in, right? So what do you do to, even for your hands, for your mind?
Well, after hearing music all day on the way home, sometimes I would put on either talk radio just to get my mind off something, or I'd put on something classical and listen to the melody. Or I'd find just something on the radio that didn't require a lot of thought. My mind wouldn't go, "Well, that kick drum's doing this," and wow, that's cool. It's some sort of melodic thing, and just make your mind chill a little bit. And sometimes you might get up a little early the next morning and go down and play for a little while, and before you go to a session, and then I would listen to some of the stuff that would happen when I was going through that is I'd go to a CD store or a record store at the time, and I'd buy 10 new records, 10 new CDs, whatever, and I'd just have them in my car seat and listen to different stuff all day in between sessions. And sometimes that would, not in the genre. I'd buy a jazz record, I'd buy a world music record, I'd buy a rock record, listen to U2, whatever. It's all guitar parts are guitar parts. They can all be adapted and, nestled into something that's where you need something. So I was just trying to learn some of that stuff. And occasionally it would be, I'd go to a music store and see a new guitar and buy a new guitar or buy a new amp or buy a new pedal or whatever.
Yeah.
And get to hear something different for a while, because part of that is hearing that same sound over and over and over and over again. And, changing that up will cause you to feel different and cause you to think different.
Yeah.
So, and I think part of burning out is just being tired. You really have to take care of yourself in this kind of career, because you have to protect your brain and your ears, and you just need to recharge. And we were all probably working too much. I'd leave the house at 9 a.m. and get back at 10 at night. And there's not a lot of time in between to recharge. And, there were days, I had a few days where, somebody would say, "Hey, I cut a session and I want you to overdub on 3 of the songs. When can we do it?" And I'm like, I remember saying to this one guy, "You like to work early in the morning?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm up really early." And I said, "Let's meet at the studio at 6. And I met these guys at 6 a.m. at the studio, and I had all my stuff delivered the night before, got up and I played on all their songs, and we finished up at 9. My guys came in and grabbed my gear, moved it to the next place, started at 10, moved to another place, went to 2, another place at 6, and then I had to go somewhere else for 10 p.m. that night. And I think I got through around 1:30, and I don't remember driving home. It was like having way too much to drink. I was just like, my eyeballs were. But yet, then in the last song, I don't feel like I did anything different in the very last song of the day that I did in the first song in the day, because, you attack. You feel that mode going, and it's like, so.
But you did all this also raising 3 kids now.
Yeah.
That's grown up to be wonderful people. We have 3 wonderful kids. How did you balance it?
Well, lots of times, after a 2:00 session, when we finish at 5, I would jump in the car and go to a basketball game, go to a football game, go to whatever the kids were doing, go back to work, see them next day, get up, take them to school, spend a little time with them in the mornings. You're just making the best of it.
Did it ever hurt your heart?
Oh yeah. There are times you had to.
He says, this ain't like your 9 to 5. You don't go to work, get at home at 5.
Yeah.
You've gone in the studio, on the road, all the things. You give me an experience about what that felt like a little bit.
Well,
because I deal with that.
It's heartbreaking, when you have to miss something, and I say you have to miss something. There's always a choice, but the choice is not an easy choice. My son's playing his last home game in football, but Faith Hill is cutting that day, and I want to book you all day. Can you do it? And that happened. That's the other stuff happened. And you go, whew. At that point, it's not simply a choice for your kid or for your work.
Right.
There's a lot of massiveness going on both sides of that, because you so much want to be there, but
because that one opportunity, it's like you're going, well, what happens if I don't take this? Because there's everybody in this town wants that call.
Everybody's right behind you,
But then your son is on the field and going, well, where's
Dad? Yeah.
And he doesn't understand. Maybe he did understand, but I don't know.
I hope
he's there. Yeah, I'm sure he does now. But kids at the time, you don't know if they do or not.
Well,
and they're not really supposed to.
That's a part of this. That's a job,
Tricky, man.
We were out on the road a couple of years ago, and one of the guys in the band missed his kid's high school graduation, and he was like, I just, he was in charge of the band, so he was like, I just don't know what to do, and you just make the best decision that you can make.
Which brings up a very interesting story. So last year, you're out on tour as the band leader for Brooks and Dunn. Delena's college graduation.
Our youngest. Yeah.
Y'all were booked in Florida, Jacksonville, or something like that.
We were booked in West Palm Beach. Was the first date of the tour. And we'd been rehearsing for a couple weeks. Of course, I knew this. I'd known her graduation date, but not the time. And it was on the Saturday, which was the night after the first date of the tour, second day of the tour. On the Saturday, we were played on the east coast of Florida. I can't remember what it was over there, but it was about a 4-hour drive from West Palm Beach over to where it was. And I remember finding out the date in January, and this was May that this happened. And I remember going, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And, I brought it up to a couple of friends. They're like, just get us up. And I'm going, but I have a responsibility as the band leader, because generally after the first night, there will be changes because the flow isn't right, or we want to change some songs around, which that's not a bad deal at all. But people start changing songs and start saying, hey, I didn't have enough time. Let's add more time to this intro. Let's make this intro longer, but let's do something different. So the second day of sound check is going to be probably complex. And so I have a friend that has a plane, Big City Buenos Aires. And so I called him, and he was my flight instructor when I was taking flying lessons. But I didn't actually get my license, so I knew I couldn't fly myself. But I called Brian, and he has a twin. I said, and Delana went to ETSU in Johnson City. So I'm thinking, I'm going to be down in Florida. How do I get from Florida to Johnson City and back? So my wife checked all of them, all the airlines, and there's no way that could happen, And Brian said, I don't think I can make this work with my twin. I don't think it's fast enough for you. He said, but let me work on this. And a couple of weeks later, he calls and he said, hey, do you remember Justin? Do you remember Justin from flight school? I went, yeah, I remember him. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He said, well, he works for a company that has charter jets now. And plus he has his own plane. And I said, oh, okay. And because I'd called all the private pilots that I knew working in the world, and they're like, oh man, I even called one company and they're like, oh, it'll be $20,000. I'm like, oh, okay. So I called Justin, and he says, I explained the situation. I said, here's the deal, and here's my time frame. Here's what I got to do. And I said, Brian told me that, I should call you and ask you, maybe you knew somebody that could help or whatever. He goes, man, I'll help you. I've got 2 kids too. And if I can help you, then I'll feel good about it. I went, okay, well, how does this work? And he goes, I've got a Pilatus. Mm-hmm. He said, it's a turbo. And he said, 2 hours each way. And I was like, really? And he said, you pay the expenses. I'll fly that. So we did the first night, and I talked, usually the buses would all run together in case somebody broke down. And I talked to the tour manager and I said, can our bus leave when we're done and go to the East Coast? He said, sure. And I told Justin, I'll meet you in the lobby. I'm going to get you a room, and I'll meet you at the lobby of this hotel, 6 a.m. on Saturday morning.
And the day of her graduation.
So the show went great.
And then you had to play that night.
Yeah. And I went over to respective buses after the show. I said, how'd everything feel? They're going, great. Everything's cool. It's like, okay, I'll see y'all tomorrow. I didn't really say when I'd see them tomorrow, what I'd be doing, because Ronnie and Kix really wouldn't come to sound check.
Yeah. Occasionally they would.
But general rule is that they didn't, but sometimes they would. So, so I talked to my guitar tech and I said, you know what I'm supposed to play? You know my guitars. we just need to make sure everything's working. That's what sound check is. You run through a couple songs and everybody makes sure all their acoustics, electrics, fiddles, steels, everything works perfect out front. No, problems with gear. So he says, okay. So I meet Justin at 6 a.m. and we get to the airport. He does pre-flight. We leave 7:30, whatever. I'm landing in Johnson City at 9:30, quarter of 10. I'm going, whoa. Okay, half of this is over, and I'm still nervous wreck about the back half because that's the big part. So we go to early lunch with the whole family because we're all there instead of after graduation dinner. We do this lunch thing. Then graduation instead of 10 a.m., it gets pushed back to 2 p.m. And I'm going, oh gosh. So I go to graduation. Delaney is in the back, of course. And they have to go through all the colleges and all the things before that. And so finally she walks. And when she does that, I waved. She knew we were going to be leaving. And I waved and said bye to the family. And I think it was about 5 o'clock at that point. And I'm going, I don't see how this is going to work. The show starts at 9 in Florida. So I go out. My son takes us back to the little Tri-Cities airport. Yeah. And Justin looks around. He looks at the plane, fires up, and does his pre-flight. Boom, we're out. It's raining like crazy. We're all above the clouds, and we're landed. And we were playing an amphitheater in I can't remember the name of the town it was, the city. And luckily, the airport was like 10 minutes away. And I remember we came in, and he said, hey, there's the amphitheater right there. And so we had to make a turn like this to come in. And he turns us, and then he does the wings like this. And he said, look, right over there it is. And showing me. At that point, my dear friend Mark Hill is standing out in the parking lot. It's 8:15. And he's standing there, and he sees this airplane goes by. And by that point, I can get text. And he goes, are you in that airplane? I was like, yes. He was like, oh my gosh. We land. They have a car waiting for us because the tour manager knew. There was about 5 of us that knew what was going to happen that day. I didn't want to put this word out and get everybody all rattled. I'll show up 8:30, go to the dressing room. And by that point, I'm shaking. I have to have a little cocktail to calm down a little bit. We play the show. Justin's backstage hanging out. He's having a great time. I'm having a great time. It cost a little bit, but it's like, man, but what a day, I got that was in one turn where it all worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good dad.
And it usually doesn't work out like that, but
yeah. I love that. So, long time ago, you were, when, I don't know what we were talking about, but I was a new young artist. We had become friends, and you gave me a lot of advice early on. And you told me whenever I started to make a little money, buy a rental property. And that's something you did, what now, 25, 30 years ago?
Late 90s.
And so what's interesting to me is you started buying real estate and rental properties early on in your career, when you started to have some success. And as I know you now, even though you're still at the top of the game, you're still the first call for a lot of huge artists and producers. If you didn't get another call, you'd be okay, because you invested a long time ago in real estate and you haven't stopped. You're building a couple houses down in Millie Island now. I don't know what you got going on here.
Well, yeah, those are done, and we don't have any building in Prague.
But what was was there somebody that gave you that same advice early on? Because musicians, what I remember you telling me is we don't have a retirement plan.
Right.
And that it would be a great decision if I invested in real estate as soon as I could, which was great advice, because that saved my ass in 2020.
Yeah.
And so what was your, I know a lot of folks would be interested in knowing, because you were smart enough to do that.
Well, I don't know if it's smart enough, but when my wife and I got married, there's an area of town here called Sylvan Park, which was transitional. as I would say. And I bought an old Tudor style house over there, and it had a main floor. It had an outside staircase to an attic apartment. It was a separate, I don't remember if it was a separate meter or what, but that came with a renter at the time when we moved in, and I remember going, wow, this is cool. This helps out with my mortgage. At the time, whatever my mortgage was, $1,500 or $1,800 a month. All of a sudden, it went down to $1,200 a month or $900, whatever, And my wife lived in Sylvan Park as well, and she had just bought a duplex, and she was living in the front half, and the back half was making about 80% of the mortgage payment. And I'm going, and when we got married, we lived in my house, and so all of a sudden we had 3 rentals, and we're going, whoa, this is paying for our rent, and it's paying the mortgages. So going, wow, this is cool. So, we're both going, So we didn't take any courses, and we didn't have anybody explain this to us. So I just sort of tripped and fell into this because I had this friend at the bank. And to explain how I had this friend at the bank, when you're a musician and you're working sessions, you don't get paid from the union. The union basically makes sure that you get paid from whoever you're supposed to get paid from, and they keep track of everything, but they don't write you checks. You get paid from whoever you worked for. So if I did 15 sessions in a week, I might get 15 different checks. So I'd go to the union and I'd pick up a stack of checks every couple of weeks. And instead of going to the teller, I made this friend that was an officer at the bank, and she said, come over here. I'll just take care of all this stuff for you. You can just come in anytime I'm here. You just come over here because, there's people come in, big lines, and you're up there trying to cash this, I'll take care of this for you. So we got to be really good friends. And one time I'm there and she said, hey, I want to sign you up for HELOC. And I said, what's a HELOC? She said, it's a home equity line of credit. It's like you'll get a checkbook that you can do, and it's very low interest. I went, I don't think I want this. How like you can get credit cards from everywhere, but I'll stop doing that. I'm like, I don't. She goes, I think you do. And I was like, whoa. She goes, look at it this way. She said, you don't owe anything unless you write a check. I said, really? And she said, yeah, and the interest rate's really low. So whatever you need it for, home improvement. And she knew we were in a property. She said, do you want to make a down payment on a property? You can use this. And I took it home and I was like, to my wife, Tammy, I said, got this thing called a HELOC. And she was like, oh, I know what that is. And we decided to use that instead of coming out of pocket. We decided to see what it would feel like for us to make our money to live on and let this other money feed itself, basically, other people's money, what you always hear about as you're going through this. So we bought a handful of duplexes and single family homes using that because at the time you needed, 20 or 25% down payment to avoid the mortgage insurance or whatever. We didn't want to deal with any of that. So we'd write that check. Now, I'm creating debt over here, but I'm also getting gain from these houses that are, and duplexes, you're getting what they call, one guy explained to me, said, you have, 8 properties, but you have 15 doors. I'm like, what? He goes, that's how many establishments are in all those, how many doors that pay rent. And I went, oh, okay. So we figured out how we could pay those mortgages and have a payment on this. Even if we didn't expect to make any money from this, all of this, we wanted to break even. And when we started getting ahead a little bit at a time, as you know, from how I started putting in an account over there because an air conditioner's going to break, and that's $3,000, and I didn't want to pay for it. So I wanted everything to be self-sustaining. And in the big picture, you want all that to go until things start getting paid off. Then you just have income. So the whole time we were doing this, we were really busy, both of us. She's a great fiddle player as well, and singer and songwriter, and we were really busy. We didn't need that money to support our life. We just let it go, and as those, like I said, as those things pay themselves off, then you have a little bit of retirement, or you can use that to pay down other debt you might have. And when they started paying themselves off, we paid the HELOC back, and even,
Sure.
got it back to zero. So
How important do you think it is for musicians or, guys that are owner operators of their own companies that they're not putting into a retirement plan? They're not putting in for this or that. It's not the corporate style. How important is it, especially for creatives and artists and songwriters, to think about that, in your opinion?
I think it doesn't seem like it's important at the time, because when you're 30, 60, or 65 or whatever, it feels a long ways away.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it is, but you've got time to get things in order so you can enjoy that time. And at the time, we were working really hard, making great money, and a lot of my money was going into my union pension. So again, the union doesn't hire you for anything. They don't pay you. You're in the union because they help track down all of your balances, all of your, and they offer some protection of some stuff, and they have a pension plan. And I thought, there was a lot of talk about that's not going to be here. I thought, well, if that's not going to be here, then what will we do? I mean, what will we do when we retire? Or I don't know how we'll retire in the music business. I mean, I still love to play guitar every day. You used to love to write songs. I mean, but you don't, sometimes I think there will be a point where we don't get the calls to do stuff like we used to. And so we just decided to follow that up on the real estate. Hopefully that would work out, provide some sort of security and at retirement or slow down time or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So,
how would your life be different right now if you didn't do that?
Well, it definitely is another job. We took care of all those properties ourselves for a long time. And I think at one point we had about 14 properties. Maybe I can't really remember, but at some point Tammy said, maybe we need to get a company to manage these for us, so we don't have to go over there and collect rent, and and it was great. I wish we'd have done that earlier. We because we had several of them, and if a plumber, if there's a problem with a water heater and somebody calls you at 5:30 in the morning, hey, I've got to go to work today, I don't have hot water, what do I do? We'll go to Holiday Inn and I'll pay for it. I mean, I don't know what else
Yeah.
What would I want to happen? That's the way we always ran our stuff. How would we deal with it if we were there? Like, let's turn this over to management. Let them, they have plumbers, they have everybody, they can deal with it. So, it worked out.
Yeah.
And, still ongoing. We're still paying for some of that stuff, and some of it's starting to loosen up a little bit. And,
Well, things have worked out well though for both of your all's careers. So
well,
you hadn't hit a streak. You hadn't hit a cold streak.
I'm very thankful.
And then as the times went on, studios. When did studios start shutting down in Nashville to where you knew you needed to create a home studio to be able to do overdubs and such?
I probably had a place for 25 years. It was, albeit the first one was very small, just like a little direct, because I love to sit and create things and I'd write songs, whatever. And Tammy would write and we'd do little demos. And then I started getting more and more interested in it, and it started getting bigger and bigger until now I've got a whole place I can track here. But along with that same time, the business started changing. There weren't record sales like there were before. So everything started being streaming. So the actual sales of a product started going into a slump. And then, if there's several ways to look at this, there was less product being sold, which, okay, there's still Walmart and Target. I don't know if they have records or CDs still or whatever, but I mean, do you have a CD player in your car? I don't now. So everything's streaming or radio. And so a lot of the studios that were charging, $2,000, $2,500 a day, all of a sudden the budgets for records were shrinking and studios were going out of business. Real estate in Nashville became crazed. So Music Row, since it was right there close to downtown, lots of big businesses started moving their offices over there, build these big buildings and tear down studios. And
I guess as the technology developed too, I guess that was a major part of it, because all of a sudden you could do what you do in the studio at your house.
Oh, yeah.
In the same quality. And so I'm sure that made an impact with, well, now I don't have to go to the studio.
Well, lots of people would go to the studio to track their records. They might book 2 days to go cut, 12 songs or whatever, 10 songs, whatever. And then they say, let's get basic tracks. And then, do you have a place at your house? I'm like, yeah, I have a place. And the thing about having a place at your house, it's like, well, I could go to Guitar Center and I can buy the cheapest thing and I can do this and this, but you have to, I went and bought the same thing that I play through when I go to Ocean Way. So, which is a massive studio here in town. They're owned by Belmont now, but at the time Ocean Way was its own thing, or Starstruck or whatever, same kind of microphones, same kind of mic pre's, because I wanted to be able to get the big expensive sound, as you would say, not cheap paper, cheap mics. And, so then people would go, okay, I'm going to come over to your house these 2 days. We'll book that next week and we're going to play guitar and we'll do solos and stuff. And so, that started happening. And then people would pay you well, because they didn't have to pay for studio. Most of us know how to run our own rigs. And since it's overdubs and it's just me playing, I don't have a problem punching myself in and out. I can stop. I know enough. I've learned enough so I can handle my own rig. And sometimes they would bring an engineer, but if they didn't, they're saving money on the studio and engineer. They're saving money on cartage, which is the money it costs to have all of our rigs show up at a studio, because I've got stuff here.
Most people won't know what cartage is, but say, in the crazy days of your playing, and you may be doing 3 sessions at 3 different studios. Explain what cartage is, in the sense of, they got to have, so cartage, all your amps, your pedal board, your guitar cases that have to hold 5 to 10
guitars, 8 or 10 guitars in a big trunk.
Yeah.
And I had an amp rack that was about this, that had 3 or 4 heads in it. And then I had a big pedal board, and then some cases with miscellaneous talk boxes and
other. So you had to have 2 or 3 of everything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same rig, where you're playing a session, and then cartage, they're taking a second rig over to the next studio, already having it in place, guitars laid out, pedal board laid out, ready to go for you to go sit down, pick up the guitar, boom, 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 and you're on again.
Yeah, and they were taking their other rig from that studio you just finished at and moving it to the 6 o'clock rig, or the next morning, or whatever needed to happen. But so, and they're paid by the record company. So that way you have the same sound every day. And, if you had 3 or 4 amps and you carry all that stuff in from your car and all your guitars and your pedal board, you're worn out by the time it's time to start playing. So this way,
that's rock star status.
It's necessity when you're moving that many places, because otherwise, then do you have time to stop and grab a bite of lunch or something, So,
it's pretty cool.
That's what that was. So, yeah.
the good old days. I like hearing about them.
Yeah,
So do you,
great time.
nowadays, I mean, do you still, you still have cartage on
Mhm.
these big sessions. Is it same amount kind of thing, or is it kind of tinkered where you have to have less rigs? Or
Well, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, sounds changing. And with my cartage rig now, I have 3 heads. I have an old Bassman head, and I have uh, a nailer head, which is kind of like one of a Marshall.
Yeah.
But not as aggressive. And then I have another head, which is just sort of a magic thing, does whatever I want it to do. So, I think with all those, I can get whatever I need out. I can get a heavier thing, or I can get a cleaner thing, or whatever. So, just somehow it works, and you juggle it until it all works.
So I want to ask you about, do you think what AI is doing right now is going to affect musicians moving forward with, now it's not going to affect guys like you. My opinion is guys like you can't make an AI Jeff King and what he does. You can't make an AI Greg Morrow and these guys who have a thing, right? Do you have a fear of how it's going to affect the next generation of musicians trying to get into the session world? And do you think demo world is going to be slaughtered?
I think demo world will be slaughtered. But there's good and bad to all of it. So every demo session that I'm on now, or no, let me rephrase that. Every master that I'm on now, where we're cutting a record, the demo is generally an AI demo. Someone has fed something in, or maybe they've had a demo of an old song and they put it in AI because they want to see what it comes up with.
Sure.
It's a great tool.
Yeah.
But when people, I don't think AI's, I think it's really, really, really good right now. I don't think that I would put it up against some of my favorite records.
Sure.
Because there are things that, AI searches from theoretically all music that's available. The song still needs to be a great song before you put it in AI.
Sure.
Now, and I know, you can put a great song in AI and it'll spit out something cool. And I can tell, and maybe, I don't know if everybody can tell or not, but since I've played guitar for so long, I know what it's supposed to sound like. I can hear sometimes the guitars just fizzle, and it's like they'll play a lick and then it'll kind of go away. And sometimes the tones are super cool, and sometimes the fiddles don't sound great, but it does what it's supposed to do. Drums sound great usually. Vocals sound incredible. I want a burly guy to sound like whoever. Chris Stapleton is singing a song. You're going to get that sound. That guy could get a record deal, and they have. But finally, people caught on. Like, no, you can't. That's something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And I think, I might be wrong, but I think I read some stuff about that the other day, and I get so much stuff here when people want me and they write a song and they'll send me the demo and say, hey, we like what they did. Can you take that and improve on it? And lots of times I'll go, well, AI came up with a cool hook. But sometimes AI changes the chords of stuff.
Sure.
And good or bad, whatever. Maybe sometimes you go, wow, I like that better. I wouldn't have thought of that. So I think,
and now what you can do with it, capabilities. I like to mess with things and see what it can do.
Yeah.
So you can download the stems. If you like the drums and the bass, well, I like that. Mm-hmm. Throw that in, trigger it with different drum sounds. But it's like the guitar, the quality, when you break it down, you actually solo the things out. You're right. The quality's not there, for those kind of things. So, for what you do, it's like perfect. It's like, well, I don't like what the guitar's doing, but
Yeah.
I want to send it to Jeff,
And lots of people will send me stuff and they'll go, hey, we want to start with you. I want you to replace the acoustics and the electrics on this. And I will. And they say, we're going to send this to a drummer and a bass player and a keyboard player afterwards, but because we like what this did, we want it real. And that means that take what it did. And if sometimes people say, I like this guitar rick.
Yeah.
And you just do this. I'm like, sure. Sometimes AI plays things that make you scratch your head on guitar or any instrument because it's like, well, it's not really easy to access whatever it's doing under your fingers. So, sometimes I sit there and go, I can't get that note from whatever these combinations of whatever. So I have to kind of work my way through some tunings and go, oh, okay, here he is. Which is like, is that bad? No, because this makes me go, wow, that's cool. I'll do that again by myself on another thing, or not the same thing, but, opens up some options. But
what's your worry about it?
It's not great yet, but from 0 to here, it's been fast, maybe 5 years, maybe others, 10, I don't know, whatever. How long is it going to take from here to there? And at some point, my buddy David Hungate, we were talking one day at a session, and he said, I played on this Shania Twain record. He said, we took a long time getting everything perfect. He said, it's a stunning record. Everything's perfect. Sounds great. Not a kick drum out of place, nothing, And he said, one day I was thinking while I was sitting in the lobby waiting on the guitar players, he said, I'm thinking about this guy that pulled up at a traffic light in this pickup truck with the windows down. He's got a Massey Ferguson hat on, and he's got 2 Radio Shack speakers back behind, when you had a pickup truck and the seat folded forward when you only had the one seat, and you just stuck a couple speakers back there and it sounded terrible, but didn't matter. You're having fun, you listen to music. He goes, that guy's going to be listening to this record. He goes, I'm not sure now. I'm starting to wonder where the cutoff is on how much. Who are we doing this for? Are we spending these extra half of extra hours making it sound great so we as musicians can sit back and go, wow, this is cool.
Sure.
The 90% of the population that listens to all this stuff, they don't care about MP3s anymore. Remember when MP3s didn't sound as good? Now, well, I don't know if they don't sound any worse than they did or any better than they did, but now we've just come to accept that that's what it is. So I think the thing with AI, I mean, you can put in, you've messed with it. You can put in hometown, tailgate, Friday nights, girl, cheerleader, beer, whatever, cold beer down by the river. It'll spit out a song that's pretty dang cool. And it'll have a guy singing it that's pretty dang cool, or a girl, or whatever. And you go, boy, where does this go? This opens up so many great possibilities for so many great things. But it's also like, when it starts getting really, really, really good, are people going to stop calling me to play guitar on it because it sounds great? Again, I don't know.
Yes, on that Billboard #1 country song was an AI.
Was it? I didn't.
Yeah, Billboard, the #1 country song on the chart on Billboard was an AI.
What sign?
Artist. Can't remember what it was. You can look it up.
Well, remember when Randy
just up the article. Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's great to hear Randy again, but it's not Randy. So I don't know. I mean, I have different emotions about that. But
I know like publishers, what I hear in town, if a publisher knows that the demo was generated in an AI, they won't take it. Yeah. Because they're always doing that, where it's like, and then songwriters are like, I'm just going to make up a band name or something, and say it was somebody because they're taking that out of my demo, out of my budget. Right. I'm having to pay that back.
Right.
But everybody's not thinking about, it's kind of like the guy that goes out and, picks potatoes out of the ground. Well, now you can do it cheaper with an automated machine. It pick taters itself, and it can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't know what it's going to do, but it makes me wonder for future musicians.
Yeah.
And so that's my thing, like with, American Hustle, it's like, hey, talking to the younger generation, 2020 for me was kind of at a pivotal point. You and I just finished a record together down in Muscle Shoals. It was really cool. And 2020 came just for me, for a lot of guys that was at a certain point in their career, on an upper trajectory. I mean, it was like a train hitting the canyon wall. It just came to a screaming stand, And so, I started a little side hustle. It thankfully turned into a nice business, which showed me it's like, okay, this is how fast something can come to an end. So having your, diversifying and whatever that means for you, it's like, isn't a bad thing. And going, hey, a younger musician, not saying you don't, I'm not saying not to pursue your passion, not to go after it in your career, but just think about what's going on. And I hate the what ifs. I never liked the idea of a plan B, because I feel like if you have a plan B, you never go after your plan A.
Right.
But as you're looking at things and going, hey, here's what's going on, when you can, it's probably a good idea to make sure, if that time comes, you got something. Yeah. You can still pursue your passion,
If I were going to give advice to young players that want to get into this business, I would say, learn your instruments, work on it, work hard. Also learn how to write a song, learn how to engineer, learn how to run. Like in Nashville, a lot of us use Pro Tools just because this is the standard for a long time. And there may be other things out there. I mean, there are, but, Pro Tools has just become the thing that most of us use, that switched when we're at home studios. And learn how to use all this programming stuff. I mean, learn how to use Suno and all that stuff, because it's an idea factory. You just got to learn how to, and just, get in it deep, get into all that stuff and learn how to create from beginning to end,
Yeah. Because, I mean, even in being a musician, which, guys on the road playing for other people, at the end of the day, it's just like, let's with any other business, if it's not your name on the bill, you're building someone else's dream.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You're building that artist dream. You're getting paid to do that. And so what's going to facilitate you in building your own dream at the same time? And that's where it's like, you're right. Learn how to write a song, not just play guitar, learn all about this stuff. It's almost like, because the artists right now have a lot more power to do things than ever before,
and a lot more responsibilities, social media and keeping up all that stuff.
Oh yeah. So if you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self something, knowing everything you do now, what would you tell him?
Boy, I would say dig in hard and just what I said that to the new guys, I would say dig in hard and learn everything you can. Technology when I was 20 isn't the same as it is now. So to learn engineering was another job. But now with software, it's a little easier. You take so many YouTube videos and do all this stuff and learn. But the creative aspect of the music business is, for me, I would still learn to play guitar. work hard about it, work hard at it, and try to figure out, be better. And I would get into the songwriting thing because it's once that opens up, it's pretty creative. I mean, it's incredibly creative.
Sure.
Blank sheet of paper, and you come up with whatever at the end of the day. Plus, in my time, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, whatever. I mean, that was big money years because there were big sales years. And you don't think of music as being a product, but it really is a product. You go to a record store and you're doing this. You go down the shampoo aisle at Kroger and you're doing this. I mean,
Sure.
everybody's trying to sell. I mean, you want to buy a bottle of Prel, you want or whatever it is, and you want to buy a Vince Gill record or whatever. I mean, I would say spread out a little bit and learn more about all that.
Take away all the creative musician stuff. What would you tell the man personally? The boy, I should say.
Yeah.
Coming from the man.
Well, you mean I would probably the next thing for me would be family stuff. I try to be a little better husband and dad and son and brother and friend, and as you're having your job and your hobby is the same thing, it's like 100%. And that's why you work all day sometimes and you don't get to see your family. And then on weekends, like, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to go down here to this, having a, big convention where it's a guitar convention. They're going to sell guitars. It's like, is that all you think? Yeah. Well, kind of, this is my hobby today. Monday, I'm going to be sitting in a chair with headphones on. And that's going to be my job, So there's so many things, I mean, it's hard to define one thing, but, you want to, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I would like to say I did everything as the best I could, being a family man and, your relationship with your faith, whatever that may be. And it's just all that stuff,
yeah. So being at the top of the game, like I said, you're one of the most humble guys I know. And a lot of guys, I mean, you get a little bit of notoriety and a man starts to think he's pretty wise. And it's hard for a man to admit that he's not pretty wise. So what keeps you grounded?
Man, you can't listen to that stuff. I mean, it's cool when somebody says, boy, that guy's really good or whatever, he played really great stuff or I like having him on a session or whatever. And the thing that we laugh about in our world is when somebody says, you know what, I've enjoyed you on these last 3 or 4 sessions. And I'm never going to do another session without you. And that's when you look at your friends and you go, this was my last session with this guy. Why? I don't know. But sometimes that's the way it is. So you have to expect that,
Yeah.
I mean, I always think whatever I do, I work as hard as I can and I'll give my 100%, I give 150%, and I will stay until the last second, whatever. And, sometimes things just don't work. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, I think it does. And I think, you're one of the rare ones, when little old me has asked you to come out on the road and, in between, playing for Reba and doing records for the biggest of the big, playing the CMAs, gazillion of times you played on Kelly Clarkson, Vegas shows, and then somebody like me calls and, hey man, you want to jump on a plane and go play in BFE, New Mexico for a night? And we got a camper as a green room. You're like, yeah, man, let's go. And so I appreciate that about you. And for a young artist, like myself and those times, man, it made me stand up a little bit more on stage, because I'm like, I can't believe I've got Jeff King over here playing guitar. So
if you love it, then you do it.
Yeah. And so I think that it goes farther than you think when you do that. And I don't even think you think of that, which is awesome, but it does lift people up when you do it. So that's pretty cool. So we're going to wrap it up. What do I'm under the belief that men, in the sense of the word, are becoming more rare these days, in the sense of work ethic, their faith, how they step up as a man in the family household, all the things that a man was designed and meant to do. What do you think the American hustle means when it? I'm not talking just career, not success, not money. Kind of all of it consumed with how a person goes about living his life and pursuing his dreams. What does all that mean to you? That's a big question.
Boy, as you were asking that, it made me think of first thing I thought of was, when you're a kid, you remember going to church and getting the little, what's the thing they hand you when you come in? Yeah, but this called something else. Whatever it is, you get it. And I remember seeing on the front, there was a car, looked like a 60s car, and a dad had a hat on, and the two kids and the mom, and they were walking in the church. And I remember going, is that the perfect American family? Because dad's going to work every day and mom's, Now, that can be shattered 1,000 ways, because that at some point it doesn't get political, because it's how I grew up, but other people don't believe it like that, and that's okay. But for me, I see that as part of the thing to aspire to, like have a strong value, having strong values and beliefs, and because that's what helps keep you grounded in your sense of right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to figure out what you want to do and go forward. If you don't, then what's the point? If you, I wanted to do this, so I was like you. Just a quick side story is, back in the days when I was going to clubs to hear guitar players around, I remember I met like 3 or 4 guys, and we'd all end up at the same club listening to this one guitar player. And we went to dinner. We went to a late night, like at one of the places after having a beer or two at the club. And one of the guys said, "Hey, I've got a question that I think we all should answer." Because we're all kind of friends, pals and whatever. And he said, so let's go around the table. And he said, I'll start with you. And I was like, I think I was the last guy, which is funny because he said, okay, so what's your plan for the next X amount of time? And the one guy says, well, when I came here, my plan was to stay 5 years. And if I'm not doing, what I want to be doing in 5 years, then I'll probably go back to Virginia. And my dad's a real estate guy, and I'll probably do real estate. It's like, okay, and what about the next guy? Well, I'm going to stay here for 2 years. And if I'm not out touring, then I'm going to go do whatever and whatever. And everybody has a very similar thing. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. If you want to be an astronaut and you find out you can't be, you're going to have to go do something else. So, and as you know, in the music business, you can work as hard as you can work and be as good as you can be. And sometimes you just don't get the break for whatever reason, So it got to me and they said, what are you going to do? And I was like, whoa, I've never thought about this. I guess I guess I'll just try to figure out how to figure this out. I have a college degree, And the other guys did too, if I remember correctly, but I'm like, the college degree helped me think, how we sort out problems and think better. You know, I mean, I learned how to do drafting and all that stuff too, but I learned how to solve problems. So I thought, boy, I don't know. I guess I won't know until I don't. What point do you get there and you go, okay, I'm done? I mean, everyone has their different point, being said. So their American hustle is a hustle, and and find out what you love to do, so it's not work. You know, I mean,
kind of where motivation ends, discipline has to kick in.
Oh, absolutely.
Take you the rest of the way.
And it's not going to be perfect.
Because if it doesn't happen in 5 years, it's like, well, I guess it didn't happen.
Or is it getting ready to happen?
Right.
Because of all the 5 years of work hard you put in, you know. That's everybody's personal question at the end of the day for themselves. But, you know, for me, the American hustle, it's just finding what you like to do and figuring out how to do it, and then figuring out how to monetize it, and then, you know, doing the right thing with the money, helping out people, and if you're so inclined to go to church, go in church and try to be a better person. However all that is. So,
love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
I know you got about 15 or 20 or 30 songs to play on, so we'll let you get back to work.
All right. Well, it's been fun.
Jeff King is proof that mastering your craft is good, but building freedom is better. Music gave him a platform, but ownership gave him a future. Whatever you're building, your career, your business, your family, remember this: skill gets you in the door. Discipline keeps you there. Until next time, stay hungry, stay sharp, and stay free. I'm Austin Moody, and this is American Hustle.